sense. You help people find what they want to do, and you help organizations find those people and really make that marriage work in a great way. For me, I was a failed entrepreneur right at business school, and I fell into GE. I went to business school, fell into the cycle like so many people you work with, so many people you hear about. And you find yourself 5 years, 10 years later, and you look up and you want to make this contribution. And I think, we've clearly talked about that in the past, but what started hitting me was that other people, specifically our ancestors, took significant leaps. Mm-hmm. Take my grandmother as an example. Left Belarus, went through Russia, went through Japan, ultimately made her way to the United States with nothing. And you think about the risk that it took, the courage that it took. And then we find ourselves in these well-paying corporate jobs. Someone like you calls and says, I have an amazing opportunity for you to make a significant impact, and we don't have the courage to take a leap.
Right.
And by the way, that is sometimes the easy step. Now, I've taken bigger leaps, and I started by taking a single step, because when you're tethered to a company like GE, it's hard to take steps and leaps. But
That's right.
Ultimately what I said is, look, when you start taking the steps, you can take more. And when you start taking more, you take bigger steps. And over time, you get more comfortable in it. And so I wrote a book to basically acknowledge my own fears of taking a leap, talk about how I was able to overcome those fears, talk about how we as a global community need to think in a different way, be less tethered. It's called the elephant's dilemma. And it's intentionally called that because when you think about an elephant and an elephant growing up in a circus, AKA the United States,
yep.
That elephant is trained to be tethered to a pole. When it grows big and strong, it doesn't know how to break free. Well, that's like us. So many of us just don't realize our own strength, our own power, and our ability to break free and change the world.
Agreed. I totally agree. By the way, the risks that you mentioned that our forefathers took, so I live in Colorado, right? And so I go up to the mountains quite often, camping. I like to do a lot of way back solo camping, I call it, so that I can just refresh and get away. It's a great opportunity for me to get away from the laptop, put the phone down, get out of range so I can't be reached. I can't look at my phone, and I'm forced to just kind of be with nature for a little bit by myself. It's very healthy for me, mentally, physically. Anyway, the point is, often I will think, damn, like somebody had the balls to get in a covered wagon and come through here and take all kinds of risks through the weather, through the wild animals, because for me, like, I go to my Jeep, I open my little ice chest, I get out my pre-cooked food that my wife made for me, all these little things. And I was thinking about you in the book and about the risks that you mentioned. And I thought, man, this is right. This is exactly what Jon was talking about. Like, we now in this world, we're super comfortable, just like the little padded air thing that I air up for the back of my Jeep to sleep on. Meanwhile, back then they're sleeping on the ground, right? And we just take so much of that for granted. And they took so many risks that we just forget about. I think we can't really. It's hard for us to even connect our brains to the risks they took. I'm really glad you. Go ahead.
And so much. Well, I was going to say, so much good came out of those leaps.
That's right.
And that's what we have the biggest risk related to, is that as we take on less risk and we refuse to leave our bubbles, we can't innovate, we can't think differently, we find ourselves stuck, and ultimately we look up and we wonder why things aren't working a certain way, or we wonder why we're not making a bigger impact. Like, we have a very short time here, and we should really maximize every chance we can in every moment of time to do good.
The Riderflex Podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening. And if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.